Kenya Airways has been going through it. Now, since COVID-19, the overarching story of the company has been one of sorrow and strife. The airline did obtain a court order on Tuesday stopping a planned strike of its pilots. The strike is meant to start today, and the pilots are protesting two things. One, plan to downsize the workforce, and second is an issue around a pilot's fund. Now, the pilot union president has said it was not aware of an order stopping the strike. Sean Mendis, aviation consultant, joins me yet again. Let's see if he can tell us what's next for the embattled Kenya Airways. Sean, we spoke just on Monday about how KQ's default of a loan from the American Exim Bank was going to cost the government billions of dollars. And now we're back now with this particular strike in the works. So take us through the issues that the pilots are having.
Well, I think the primary issue that the pilots have right now is the role that the pilots will play in the restructuring of the Kenya Airways. There seems to be a lack of acceptance of the dire nature of this crisis on the part of the pilots. They either seem to think that there's going to be some sort of bailout that will make them huge, and they're not willing to make the same sacrifices that a lot of the other work groups are. Now, that could just simply be them not accepting it, or it could be them posturing to get a disproportionately larger influence in the new restructured entity. And, either way, it doesn't end well historically. The main issue, as you mentioned, from the pilot side has been about the Pilots Provident Fund, which is the end of service and retirement benefits for the pilots. Kenya Airways had suspended contributions to this fund during COVID back in 2020, both the employee contributions as well as the employer contributions. And that was together with a bunch of deferred salary for management and senior employees and so forth. Now, historically, Kenya Airways management has not been making any comments as to when this is going to restart. In the last few days, they've made an offer to restart making contributions starting from 2023, as well as the payment of deferred salaries to all employees, which is already ongoing. So hopefully that may be a concession that will at least bring the two sides again back to the table to negotiate. But as of right now, the sides are very far apart in what their opening positions are.
All right, so let's get some clarity. So as of yesterday evening, the pilot union president said they were unaware of a court order, which was obtained yesterday by Kenya Airways. So right now, has the strike started? Is it still expected to start today? Where are we on that?
Well, the pilots union gave notice in October. They gave the mandatory 2 weeks notice of a planned start of strike action on Wednesday, which is today. Yesterday, Kenya Airways moved the labor court to get an injunction against that. The court did grant that. I believe it's the temporary injunction until November 8th. So as of this morning, flights are operating. A few have delays, but I don't think that is related to the strike necessarily. But Kenya Airways flights are flying to and from Nairobi as of this morning. So the strike has not yet gone ahead.
All right, it's fantastic to know. So let's go back to the issues that the pilots are having, particularly around restructuring. So the main thing right now is that the company plans to reduce the number of working pilots from 400 to 207 over the course of 3 years. But this is just one of the restructuring things. We spoke about it on Monday in terms of reducing the aircraft, the leasing agreements as well. This is a larger part of the package of which the government, which is a major shareholder in the airways, is also pushing. Is there a compromise to be found? At the end of the day, this is a company that hasn't turned profit in 10 years. It is not sustainable to continue doing business the way that KQ has been doing business.
No, absolutely. And, KQ has to right size not just the airline, but also their cost structure. If they are going to reduce the number of planes that they're flying, then obviously they're going to need to reduce the number of pilots they have on the books to fly them. You can't have 400 pilots to fly half the number of planes that you had before. So that is something that that is a simple reality of it, which the pilot union obviously has to protect the interests of their members. Overall, Kenya Airways has made tremendous strides. In fact, part of the statement that their chairman had made, I think it was yesterday or the previous day, is noting how much their revenue has improved over the last few months. They are making somewhere between $2.5 to $3 million a day in revenue now, which is more than double their average revenue daily in 2021. So it's a two-edged sword. You've got to increase your revenues, you've got to trim your costs, and obviously the trimming of costs is going to come in some level at the expense of labor. And unfortunately, that also means you're going to have to take on unions like the pilots union, which is one of the strongest unions there. And, they need to buy into it and share the sacrifices that the other work groups are also having to make.
You mentioned the chairman, and we've also heard from the union that they actually want the chairman as well as Alan Kilavuka, the Kenya Airways CEO. You're laughing already. They want both of them to resign. Is this something that you think is really a possibility, particularly as you said, things are starting to look up. It's not enough, but there is some kind of incremental progress that the airline has been making. Do you really think that that's even going to be a part of the considerations?
I think that is pure tit for tat posturing. Alan had said last week that if pilots were to go on strike, he'd be looking at terminating them. So I think they've turned the tables on them and said, you want to terminate us, we want to terminate you. The CEO and the chairman are accountable to the shareholders and the board of directors. The government has been very clear that they are backing a plan to turn Kenya Airways around rather than, bailing them out clearly again. Any demand by pilots is simply posturing. They have no power to force anything on that front. And, Michael Joseph's statement on that just basically acknowledges it publicly.
All right, Sean, I'll end with this. Just a quick look at what the numbers are. Kenya Airways transports around 250,000 passengers a month, some 300 million shillings that comes in monthly as well. But it currently obviously is not enough. The company is around 4.9 billion shillings in the red. What happens next? It doesn't look like, as you said now, that the strike has started. There's the potential for it not to start because of that temporary injunction, which lasts till November. But what are your predictions for the sort of situation that the company finds itself in from now till the end of the year?
Well, it's going to largely depend on whether they can continue the turnaround that they've been pushing for the last few months. They've got a lot of interesting plans over the winter. They've increased their partnership with South African Airways, which is giving them a bigger foothold in Southern Africa during the key tourist season over the northern winter, southern summer over there. They're adding additional flights to London Heathrow, which will help bring in tourists and bring in business from Europe, during this key period. Unfortunately, last year, which was also very, setting up to be a good recovery period, we were hit by the Omicron variant. But as long as we don't get hit by another black swan event like that, I'm pretty confident that they will see an improved performance over the winter months. Whether that's going to be enough and whether they're able, revenue is only one side of the equation. As long as they're able to continue their cost controls, if not cost cutting, on the flip side of the coin, they at least have a chance to come through this without needing additional bailouts. And everyone's got their fingers crossed. I don't think anybody wants to see Kenya Airways fail. But they're on the right path. They've just taken the first few steps on this. So it's a long journey ahead. And again, as I said on Monday, all the stakeholders need to buy into this if it's going to be successful.
All right, Sean Mendis, thank you so much. If anything changes in the coming hours or days, we know we'll definitely be touching base with you.
Right. Thank you.
And it's been 10 years since Kenya Airways last posted a profit. The airline has survived on government bailouts, and unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic definitely didn't help. But if you also look at Kenya Airways' East African neighbor, which is Ethiopian Airways, that company made $1 billion in profit last year. Or it continues to make money, and it's actually the best airline on the African continent. And many people are asking, does Ethiopian Airlines, the team that runs it, do they have two heads? Why is the situation with KQ so much more different and so much more difficult? We'll see how the things play out throughout the day now. The strike is not on. There isn't a temporary injunction that stops the pilots union from going on strike. But will they observe that and hold to what the court has said? It's only time that will tell. When we come back, we get into the conversation around exporting African foods globally. There's a massive diaspora out there, and there is a woman with us in the studio who's plugging into that market. Stick around. Women in Business is up next.